is very strong and very flexible. For people who have very weak nails, linen is a good answer to weak nails. As you can see, you also can lay it over nail tips, or you can lay it directly on the natural nail where a nail tip has not been applied. In laying your linen, just like in applying acrylic to the nail, you want to leave a very small, about a 1/16 of an inch of natural nail exposed all the way around the cuticle area. You do, however, want to make sure at the corner here that the linen does cover the corners of the nail. Again, those are the stress points. You need to make sure you have plenty of protection over the stress points coming down to the free edge of the nail there. You want to apply a bead of glue right at the cuticle area. You want the linen at the cuticle area to dry well before gluing the remainder of the linen down. I noticed some air bubbles, some air pockets in the linen, and therefore I go back with my glue to make sure all that linen is glued down securely before moving on. I'm then going to start working on one side of the nail. Linen has to be stretched, pulled in this position. The fibers are woven very tightly, and you have to pull and stretch those fibers open so that the glue can roll down between the linen to get a good bond for your linen wrap. Again, you want to pull it and stretch it. I still go over the nail again to make sure there are no air pockets, no places where glue has not been applied. You can clearly see those places because they show up as little white circles on the linen. On the next nail, we will apply silk. We can measure the width of our piece of silk, and you can also do this in using your linen. Hold your fabric to one side of the nail, stretch it across to the other, use your thumb to size the nail properly, so then you can cut your silk so that a very small amount of silk is wasted. I'll curve the sides so that the silk will fit evenly around the cuticle area. I use the end of my scissors here to separate the silk from the paper backing. If further trimming is needed, do so before applying your nail glue. Again, making sure all sides are covered, but yet leaving a very small margin around the cuticle area. Again, I'm going to apply a very small amount of glue at the cuticle area. Allow it time to spread and to dry, filling in any air pockets that show, and work on completing gluing down the back side around the cuticle area of our silk, and gradually working my way toward the free edge of the nail. Notice with the silk it's thinner than the linen and therefore does not necessarily need the pulling. I will pull some here to make sure it's lying down around the tip. Going back over the entire nail to make sure the silk is completely glued down. While that glue's drying, I'm going to go and file our nail tip with the acrylic overlay. Laying my file down so I can go around the cuticle area and not damage the skin in that area. Keeping my thumb close into the cuticle and nail. Pulling with my index finger on the other side so I can file around the cuticle area. In learning to do sculptured nails, artificial nails here in the salon, you do a good number of hours with the videos to pick up the steps, familiarize yourself with the techniques. There are a number of ways of applying sculptured nails and nail tips and wrapping, but this is the way we do it here at Phyllis's. We do it uniformly so that when customers have to move from one operator to another, a foreign technique is not used on the customer and they feel more comfortable if everyone does it the same way. Your initial work is done on the practice hands, the plastic hands or fingers. That's for you to get a feel of the brush, get a feel of your file before actually working on a human hand. We also do all of the work on the practice hands and fingers in an enclosed area. The customers do not need to see you practicing. You'll be more relaxed. And once you come to the floor to work on customers, they are more relaxed that you know what you're doing. They have not seen you go through your training period. So for that reason, we do all of the training, all the practicing in a private area. So when you're presented to the public, you are presented as an already trained professional. Notice the excess linen simply files off. I'm working my way around the cuticle area, getting it very flat. But in filing linen and silk, you never file on the surface of the nail, simply around the edges. There's a rule of thumb in getting your material flat around the cuticle area, be it linen, silk, or acrylic. It should be as flat as 2 coats of fingernail polish around the cuticle area. 2 coats of fingernail polish, which is very thin. But the cuticle area is what distinguishes excellent nails from just good nails, where the acrylic, the linen, the silk blends down into the cuticle, making it look as if the nail actually grew up and out from under the cuticle as natural nails do. We will be talking about nail shapes at a later time. I will say at this time, the nails we are building and forming here today, as I mentioned, have been square nails. There are square nails, overly square nails, round nails, and oval nails. It's personal choice, personal preference as to what shape a customer would like. A nail technician should be able to give some suggestions as to the best shape. Of course, it would depend on lifestyle, what people do with their hands, depends on the length of the nails. If a person has to wear their nails very, very short, then you definitely do not want to go in and file any of the sides off. They need the strength. And so you either would want to do a square nail or overlay square nail. If you weren't wearing the nail long, of course, you could wear a round nail comfortably without, in fact, filing out all of the corners. The overly square nail that I'm filing here now is simply a square nail, flat on the top, blunt, but you go in and you take the corners off. Simply round the corners off. From the square nail, you can carry a nail to any of the other shapes by first starting with the square nail. I'm working with my widths here to make sure the nails are no wider than the natural nails. Keeping it square on top and taking the corners off of the square. The next step is very important. Notice I've turned the hand back into a downward position. We use the final shaping, and doing the final shaping, you work with the hand in what we had the upward position. You're looking at the nails from the same angle in which the customers would look at the nails. That's why we shape the nails in this position. We move back to the downward position to go underneath the nails to now thin it, to make sure you get a very thin natural ridge around the nail. This is what I call thinning the nails, so that they look even that much more natural. Very important filing step. As you shape the nail, sometimes you shorten it some, and when you shorten a nail, more of the thickness across the middle will come out across the edge here. That's why it's important after shaping to always go back and thin the nails from underneath. And then sometimes in the case of a sculptured nail, some filing on top may be necessary in a downward stroking angle to bring that very thin edge. In the case of linen and silk nails, a final sealing of glue is necessary. Linen and silk are fabrics and have threads, and therefore the threads need to be sealed on the edges, especially around the edges, so that the nails will not unravel. I'm going around the edges with the tip of my nail tube, even wrapping some of the glue under the edge of the nail. Around all the edges. And also on our linen nail. I draw a line down the middle of that nail and then work my way back and forth, spreading it from side to side, paying close attention, special attention to the sides and edges of the linen. Once that has been completed, it's now time to finish off the nails with the manicuring machine. The manicure machine puts the finishing touches on the cuticle and make sure there's no product, glue, whatever, down in the cuticle area. removes dead skin, pushes the cuticle. Basically a one-step manicure. Adds a nice finishing touch to any technique. Also, use your manicure machine on the underside of the nail tip to make sure you've left no frayed edges or rough places. And any thickness that you may want to remove, you can remove at this time. Once that's done, it's time to buff the nails. Notice in all of your holding positions, your hand is underneath the customer's hand. In polishing, you can avoid smearing your own polish, and it just keeps the other fingers neatly tucked out of the way. Buffers can also cut the cuticle, so be careful in going around the cuticle area, not allowing the buffer to hit the skin. Again, you should use a very controlled buffing, sanding technique. Again, use a very controlled buffing technique. I'm using my holding finger to rotate the nail back and forth, pulling the cuticles down as I go around, shifting the position of the buffer, not to buff in one place too long. In buffing the surface of linen or silk, you will notice that the glue dries with a shiny coat. In buffing, you should buff all of the shiny surface off of the wraps. The shiny surface that you leave will turn up in your nail polish as pits, as little holes, so it's very important to take the shiny surface off of your linen and silk. Buffing the edges around the cuticle. Use your thumb. This is a situation where your sense of feel will tell you more than your sense of sight. In feeling a nail, especially the acrylic nail, you can tell whether there has been enough buffing, whether the surface is smooth or not, by rubbing it. You next want to apply cuticle oil to the cuticles. It's very soothing to the cuticles, and it also will help you bring the nail up to a natural look, the oil. Again, using my thumb to stroke the nail to make sure the surface of the nail is smooth. Notice that the silk thumb here is very clear. You cannot see the fabric, where on the linen nail you can, in fact, see the fabric. The acrylic nails are clear also. At this point, we'll ask our customer to go wash their hands using soap to lather and a brush to brush all the debris and filing and dust from the cuticle area underneath the nail all over the hand. While the customer is gone to wash and scrub their hands, the operator should clean the workstation, remove the dust from the towel if necessary, get a new towel, remove the dust from her hands, and before any polish is applied to the nail, you should ask your customer to take their keys out of their bag, their car keys, take care of their bill, and take anything else out of their bag or pockets that they're going to need for the next 30 minutes. Once you apply this polish, they do not need to go into any pockets or pocketbooks for at least 30 or 40 minutes. So you want to think ahead. Have them think ahead. I'm using a base coat here, a ridge filler. The ridge filler allows the polish to go on much smoother, the colored polish to go on much smoother. Also prevents the nail from getting stained from the polish. Notice I'm using my thumb and fingers to rotate the nail back and forth so I can polish both sides very easily. Remember not to overshake your polish. In mixing the polish, roll it in your hands. Too much shaking causes the polish to bubble even after applied to the surface of the nail. In applying your polish, you should use a very light stroke. The nail brush itself should not touch the nail at all, but simply spread the polish down and over the nail. A polish should be applied as thinly as possible in using a base coat, and then we will use 2 coats of color, and then we will use a top coat. That's 4 layers of polish. Each of those layers need to be thin. In applying polish, I go toward the center of the nail, pat and push the polish toward the cuticle area, and then stroke down the nail in a long light stroke, trying to avoid smudging or dragging my brush, simply trying to spread the polish. always working with my hand underneath the customer's hands with their fingers laying flat on the side of your holding hand. It's very important to lay the polish on the nail smoothly. One can build beautiful artificial nails, but if the polish is not applied smoothly, the nails will not look good. So polishing is a very important, very critical step that must be done properly to make all of the work look good. I found it difficult to talk and polish at the same time. I even find myself having to hold my breath if I'm trying to get the polish on especially light. It takes a considerable amount of concentration to get the polish on smoothly, evenly around the cuticle without a large amount of polish to clean off of the cuticle area. The top coat, the clear here, must be applied very lightly, because if you drag the brush any at all, you will be wiping off the pink polish, and you will notice that your clear polish will then turn pink. You can then use your polish corrector to clean the cuticle area. To give the nails a very nice, professional look and finish. Polish should and must be cleaned off the cuticle area. People who polish their nails at home can get polish up on the cuticle area. The professional should not.